Welcome to Fiction Stories Read Aloud, your cozy corner of the internet for immersive tales, tender moments, and calming narration. Whether you're here to relax, unwind, or drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. Tonight's story is just one of many we've curated to help you escape into a world of imagination at the pace your heart can handle. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, take a moment to like the video and subscribe so you never miss the next one. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the story carry you somewhere softer. Tonight's tale is one of discovery, where awkward beginnings, unexpected turns, and honest moments come together to form something unforgettable. Whether it's romance, mystery, or a little bit of both, you'll find yourself right in the middle of it. No pressure, no rush, just a good story told well. Introducing Creative Differences. Chapter 1, June and the Croissant Showdown. June Lee had exactly 28 minutes to get her croissant and make it across Williamsburg for a kickoff meeting she wasn't emotionally prepared for. It was too early for eye contact, too early for existential dread, and far, far too early for whatever chaotic energy Mondays like to deliver. She stood in line at Della's Cafe, tugging at the threadbare strap of her messenger bag and fidgeting with the enamel pin on her jacket, an old sketch of a koi fish she'd designed in college. The cafe was one of the only constants in her Brooklyn routine, loud enough to distract, calm enough to hide in. She'd discovered it 2 years ago, after her last in-person job imploded over creative differences, which really meant you're too opinionated for someone with a freelance contract. Since then, she'd kept her distance, from full-time roles, from group projects, from the kind of people who like to tell artists how to do their jobs. Freelance life was lonely, but at least it was hers. Until now. The Kingsley Collective had hired her for a 6-week mural residency. Collaborative visual strategy, they called it, which was their way of saying, we want the vibe, but also spreadsheets. June didn't usually say yes to group design, but she needed the paycheck, and part of her, some stubborn, hopeful part, was curious what it would feel like to work with people again. Carefully, cautiously, like towing back into cold water. She scanned the pastry case. There it was, the last almond croissant. She exhaled. Maybe today wouldn't be so bad after all. Then a voice behind her cut in, low, casual, and far too comfortable interrupting people.
Actually, can I grab the almond croissant?
June blinked, turned, and saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, smug in that sleepy, too handsome way that made her immediately suspicious. He wore a charcoal hoodie like it was a statement and had the kind of jawline that implied he got away with things. The barista froze, looking from him to her.
I've been in line for 10 minutes,
June said evenly.
and I was about to order that.
The man smiled, just slightly.
But you didn't.
June stared at him. He didn't seem mean, exactly. Just unbothered. The kind of person who assumed the world had a place carved out for him wherever he stood. That's what annoyed her most.
You don't get to call dibs on pastries midline,
She said.
You're right, I don't.
He gestured to the case.
I just thought you were still deciding.
I was savoring the anticipation.
His smile widened, and something in her stomach curled, not in a good way.
If it means that much to you.
He said, stepping back half a step. The barista still looked confused. June turned back to her.
I'll take the almond croissant and a cold brew, please.
As the barista rang her up, the man moved past her with a lazy sort of grace, grabbing a black coffee from the pickup counter.
Enjoy your breakfast, croissant queen.
He said over his shoulder. She narrowed her eyes.
What did you just call me?
He turned, walking backward now.
You've got that don't talk to me until I've had my baked goods energy. It's respectable.
You've got that think sarcasm is a personality energy. It's predictable.
He gave her a 2-finger salute,
May your croissant be flakier than your attitude.
and then he was gone. June blinked, then laughed once to herself. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of ridiculous start the day would have. Outside, she sat at one of the bistro tables with her breakfast and her iPad. She took a bite, perfectly crisp, annoyingly satisfying, and opened her design app. She stared at the blank canvas for a moment before sketching out a rough mural flow for the Kingsley Gallery wall. Nothing fancy, just shapes, layers, movement. Her brain was still humming with adrenaline from the encounter. She didn't want to be thinking about him, but her hand kept drawing diagonal lines. Sharp, confident. The kind of lines that reminded her of him, deliberate and cocky. He'd been attractive, yes, but also familiar in the worst way. The kind of guy who showed up with confidence and clean shoes and no emotional paperwork. The kind who only needed charm and a good jawline to get what he wanted. The kind who got hired instead of her, promoted over her, apologized without changing. The kind she'd promised herself she was done with. She stuffed the rest of the croissant in her mouth like it owed her money. It didn't matter. She wouldn't see him again. Probably. Maybe. God, she hoped not. Chapter 2. Miles, the Architect from Hell. Miles Carter left Della's cafe with a black coffee and the quiet sense that he'd just lost a battle he hadn't realized he was fighting. He hadn't even wanted the croissant. Not really. It had just been there. And she had been there too. Sharp-eyed, unapologetic, layered in oversized black and biting sarcasm like armor. She'd taken the pastry and walked out like she'd won a duel. He took a long sip of coffee and told himself not to overthink it. Brooklyn wasn't permanent, probably, but it was familiar. After 3 years at a boutique architecture firm in Vermont, quiet, successful, suffocating, he'd left everything behind. The condo, the job, the partner who'd told him he was too efficient to be emotionally available. He'd laughed at the time. Now he wasn't so sure. Kingsley Collective offered him a 6-week freelance contract to reimagine their gallery space, improve flow, increase accessibility, avoid museum-style minimalism. Function meets warmth, the brief had said. A perfect project, temporary, concrete, nothing emotional. The co-op building was half gallery, half community hub. Sunlight spilled across aging floors. The walls were covered in sticky notes, fabric swatches, and taped off panels in bright yellows and rust tones.
Hi,
Someone called.
Miles?
He turned and was nearly bowled over by a clipboard-carrying woman with cropped curls and an extremely determined smile.
I'm Camilla,
She said.
project manager and resident chaos wrangler.
He nodded.
Nice to meet you.
She handed him a lavender folder.
Here's the project overview. You're our architectural lead. Your job is to help rethink the space layout so it feels more usable but still has soul.
I can work with that.
Camilla grinned.
You'll also be co-leading with our visual strategist/muralist.
Collaborative.
Exactly. It's all about blending form and emotion, structure and story.
Miles nodded. It was what he was good at. Listening, planning, adjusting the bones of a space until it made sense. He followed Camilla down a hallway lined with paintings and flyers for things like conflict resolution clay class and zine night. They walked into the main studio, and there she was. Croissant girl, standing at the far wall in paint-splattered jeans and a tank top, black boots planted like she owned the floor beneath her. She was muttering something about shade undertones and sipping an iced coffee. Camilla waved.
And there she is now. June, this is Miles. You'll be working closely together.
June turned and froze.
You've got to be kidding me.
She said. Miles blinked.
Hi.
Camilla looked between them.
Wait, you two already know each other?
June offered a smile that didn't touch her eyes.
We've met.
Briefly,
Miles added.
over a baked good.
Camilla clapped.
That's great! Instant chemistry. I love that.
June muttered something that sounded like, "You would." But Camilla was already handing them both clipboards.
So, you'll be developing the new layout together. Miles will handle architectural flow, June's leading visual storytelling. Shared authority, shared space. There's a co-working studio off the main gallery. You'll find everything you need in there.
She disappeared with a swish of linen and color swatches. Miles turned back toward June. She was already walking toward the studio without looking at him. Inside, the room was bright and airy. 2 large desks, 1 long whiteboard, and a wall that looked like someone had been testing 10,000 shades of green. June dropped her bag onto the desk closest to the window.
I don't share brushes.
Noted?
She sat and started scrolling on her tablet.
Also, I don't like small talk before 10 a.m.
Miles opened his laptop.
What's your policy on silence and passive judgment?
She smirked, just a little.
Preferred.
They worked in a long, stiff silence. Occasionally, Sam, the intern, would hover awkwardly and ask if they needed anything. They never did. At one point, Miles glanced over at her sketches. They were chaotic, colorful, but there was structure beneath them, rhythm, cadence. He said nothing. At lunch, June left without a word. He stayed and measured the light angles near the main window. It wasn't that he didn't like her. He respected focus. He respected edge. But he also recognized it. She worked like someone who'd been burned. So did he. This was going to be interesting. Chapter 3. Welcome to the Co-op Nightmare. June had worked with difficult people before. A mural commissioner who requested less Black Lives Matter, more Martha Stewart. A tech founder who made her repaint a wall 3 times because it clashed with the in-office meditation bowls. A gallery director who once asked if her style could be a little less emotional. She could handle difficult. But Miles was a new category entirely. Not loud, not disorganized, just impossibly calm. Precision in shoe form. They'd been working side by side for 3 days, and June already had a stress knot in her back shaped exactly like his resting expression. It wasn't that he said rude things. It was that he said reasonable things in a voice so patient it made her want to throw a paint roller at him. They were designing the gallery's modular community wall, a multi-purpose centerpiece meant to house rotating art, community messages, and interactive displays. The kind of thing that needed creativity and logic. June had creativity, Miles had logic, allegedly. They were both kneeling on the floor with blue painter's tape, outlining the footprint. Sam, the intern, stood nearby holding a measuring tape and looking like he wanted to escape into the drywall. June laid down another strip.
I'm angling this intentionally. The slight curve draws the eye toward the mural.
Miles didn't look up from his digital sketchpad.
It also breaks the sightline from the entrance.
It's supposed to. It invites curiosity.
It invites confusion.
She sat back on her heels.
You know, for someone who's obsessed with flow, you're weirdly scared of surprise.
I'm not scared of it.
He said.
I just think design should guide people, not mislead them.
And I think if people never feel disoriented, they never feel awake.
That explains your color choices.
June looked up.
What does that mean?
He finally met her eyes.
Your palette is assertive.
She blinked.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
I'm saying the average person doesn't process 5 focal points at once.
Then maybe the average person should raise their standards.
Sam cleared his throat.
Should I mark this center point or?
They both turned to him.
Never mind.
He mumbled, backing away. They kept taping in silence for the next 10 minutes. The air buzzed with unsaid things. Finally, Miles straightened.
Okay, compromise. We keep your orientation curve, but I build in neutral framing so the display doesn't overpower the wall.
June crossed her arms.
You're saying you want to clean up my chaos?
I'm saying I want to anchor it.
She stared at him. It was the first thing he'd said all day that didn't make her bristle. She nodded.
Fine, but I'm keeping the deep orange.
Miles opened his mouth, paused, then said,
I'll allow it.
Sam whispered
Progress.
to himself in scribbled notes. Later, when Camilla popped in with a smoothie and 3 competing fonts for the signage redesign, she paused by the taped outline.
Ooh, this feels intentional.
Neither June nor Miles responded. Camilla gave them both a thumbs up.
Great synergy!
After she left, June shook her head.
Synergy is a fake word.
Miles didn't look up.
So is brunch.
Her lips twitched.
You're from Boston. You can't talk about brunch.
I'm from New Jersey.
He said.
Boston was a phase.
What kind of phase?
The kind with too many Patagonia vests.
June actually laughed. Just once. Quick, but real. Miles glanced at her. She went back to her sketching, and somehow they kept working. Chapter 4, Tape Territory and the Passive-Aggressive Playlist. By week 2, June and Miles had developed an unspoken routine. She arrived 5 minutes late. He arrived 10 minutes early. They barely spoke before coffee, and they disagreed on almost everything except the playlist, which is how they ended up in a passive-aggressive war over desk territory. It started small. June liked to work with her reference books spread out. Miles preferred clear surfaces. When she left a stack of color theory books on their shared table overnight, she returned the next morning to find them neatly stacked on the floor. She said nothing. The next day, she set them on his chair. He didn't say a word, just moved his laptop 3 inches to the left so it was fully in her zone. June retaliated with a line of painter's tape dividing the table cleanly in half. Camilla saw it and said,
Oh, how cute. You're setting boundaries.
Sam whispered.
It's like watching two divorced co-parents build a fort.
Miles didn't react. He just started adding his own tape, systematically, meticulously. They were on their 3rd round of measuring when June finally spoke.
You realize you're the reason God invented noise-canceling headphones?
Miles glanced up.
And you're the reason co-working spaces have panic buttons.
She cracked a smile, small but sincere. He returned it.
Truce?
She nodded.
For now.
Later, she caught him humming along to one of her playlist tracks, an old-school neo-soul song with a beat too smooth for his buttoned-up vibe.
You know this?
She asked, surprised.
My sister used to blast it while ignoring my existence.
June tilted her head.
You're a little less boring than I thought.
Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my brand.
They worked quietly after that. But June noticed he didn't move the tape again. Chapter 5, The Power Outage. The first real fracture happened during a walkthrough with the Kingsley board. Camilla had invited them to preview the new gallery layout and build excitement. June had prepped sketches and color studies. Miles had created a 3D fly-through of the space. Everything was going smoothly, until one of the board members said,
Is the mural going to be permanent?
June froze. Camilla answered brightly.
The idea is that it evolves with the community.
But permanent-ish,
The man pressed.
because it feels a bit youthful.
June opened her mouth. Miles stepped in first.
The mural is the soul of the space. It's not about permanence, it's about identity.
The board member raised an eyebrow.
It's just paint.
June's hands curled into fists. She knew that tone, the patronizing neutrality, the coded language of people who liked art, but not expression. She was seconds from saying something she might regret when the lights flickered. And then everything went black. A beat. Then Sam's voice from the back.
Did we just trip the fuse again?
A few nervous laughs. Someone pulled out their phone flashlight. Camilla tried to cover by pivoting the group toward a snack table. June and Miles stood in the dark, unmoving.
You didn't have to step in.
She muttered.
I wasn't trying to speak for you.
You kind of did.
I was trying to help.
She said nothing. Miles's voice softened.
You don't have to fight everyone all the time.
June turned to him, eyes sharp even in the dark.
If I don't fight, they assume I agree.
Another beat of silence. Then, almost quietly,
I didn't mean to speak over you.
June didn't reply. But when the power came back, she didn't move her books off the table. And Miles didn't move them either. Chapter 6, Truth or Tequila. Team bonding was, in June's opinion, a corporate scam designed to make introverts cry. Still, she showed up to the Kingsley Collective's Design Cohesion Mixer because she was technically on the clock, and the promise of free food wasn't nothing. Also, Camilla had sent the invitation with enough passive-aggressive exclamation points that declining felt risky. The studio had been transformed into a vibe. String lights overhead, finger foods on mismatched platters, and a playlist that screamed, hip but harmless. There was even a drink table with a crudely handwritten sign, Creativity and also tequila. By the time June arrived, Half the team was 3 shots into team building. She grabbed a club soda and posted up near the mural planning board, avoiding small talk with interns who kept trying to network. She didn't realize Miles had arrived until she felt the temperature in the room drop 2 degrees.
Didn't peg you for a party person.
He said, appearing beside her with a glass of something amber.
I'm not.
She replied without looking at him.
I'm here for the charcuterie and the plausible deniability.
He leaned against the wall.
Nice of you to dress up.
She glanced down at her usual black jumpsuit.
This is me dressing up.
He smirked.
You know, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were actively avoiding me all week.
She looked at him now.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you were enjoying it.
Miles took a sip of his drink, eyes still on hers.
Maybe I was.
Before June could decide what to do with that, Camilla clapped her hands and called for attention.
Okay, everyone, we're doing a quick team icebreaker. Don't groan, it'll be fun.
Groaning commenced. Camilla beamed.
We're playing creative truth or dare, but it's mostly truth. No one's drawing on anyone's face, I promise.
Miles muttered.
Shame.
June smirked, just barely. They were all ushered into a circle. She and Miles ended up next to each other. His knee brushed hers when he sat down. She did not flinch. Sam, the intern, spun a water bottle in the center of the circle like it was 2010 again. It landed on Miles.
Truth or dare?
Sam asked, grinning.
Truth.
Miles said easily.
What's the worst design decision you've ever made?
Miles barely hesitated.
Using navy and brass in a bachelor condo in 2019. I was weak.
Laughter rippled through the group. Then Miles spun the bottle. It circled, wobbled, and landed on June. She sighed.
Truth.
He tilted his head.
What's one thing you're afraid people will assume about you?
The room quieted just slightly. June didn't blink.
That I peaked in undergrad.
She said flatly.
Or that I'm just here for the vibe.
Someone near the snack table nodded too hard. Miles studied her for a beat longer than necessary, then nodded once. The game continued, circling through mild questions and harmless flirtations. But June kept thinking about the way he'd asked. Not unkind, not smug, just curious, which was somehow worse. When the game ended and people drifted toward the dessert table, she and Miles hadn't moved.
You're not drinking?
He asked eventually. She shrugged.
I don't need alcohol to say things I regret.
He nodded.
Good policy.
Then
Why that answer?
she looked at him sideways.
Because people assume it, like I'm only valuable if I'm whimsical and detached.
He was quiet for a second. Then
You're not whimsical.
June arched an eyebrow.
That's supposed to be comforting?
You're intense. Focused. That's not a flaw.
She blinked at him. There was no sarcasm, no twist in his mouth, just the statement, flat and certain. June cleared her throat.
Well, you're not as emotionally constipated as you look.
High praise. Coming from you.
He said. Before anything else could be said, someone turned the music up and the moment, whatever it was, vanished under a wave of laughter and cheap tequila. June excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, Miles was gone. She told herself it didn't matter, but she noticed. Chapter 7, The Accidental Not a Date. It started with a scheduling mishap. At least that's what June told herself when she showed up to the urban form office and found out she was the only one there. Well, her and Miles. Kingsley had planned a working session with both teams. Calendar invites were sent. Prep materials were uploaded. June arrived with coffee and a plan, and walked into a mostly empty glass-walled conference room. Except for him. Sleeves rolled up, headphones on, already sketching. She stared at him. He looked up.
You didn't get the update?
What update?
Everyone else is remote today. Camilla's stuck at the co-op. Sam bailed for a grant writing seminar.
June blinked.
So, it's just us?
Seems that way.
They stared at each other. June sighed.
I'm not going back to Crown Heights just to do this alone.
Didn't think you would.
She dropped her bag on the table.
Fine, but I'm not talking to you.
That'll be refreshing.
They worked in silence, tolerable silence. June hated how easy it was to fall into a rhythm with him. They passed files back and forth without speaking. He pulled up her layout sketches and built out a digital mock-up without being asked. She hated that it looked better when he did it. After an hour, her stomach growled. Miles raised an eyebrow.
Hungry?
Shut up.
There's a taco spot next door.
She hesitated. Not a date, just tacos. She nodded.
Fine, but I'm paying for mine.
Obviously.
They ate by the window. Mismatched chairs, salsa stains on the menu, reggaeton playing overhead.
You know,
June said.
statistically, at least 4 people on this block are walking around thinking about texting someone they shouldn't.
Miles nodded.
One of them just passed us. Cargo shorts. Definitely someone's mistake.
She laughed.
I didn't know you were funny.
I didn't know you were hungry until your stomach threatened violence.
They kept talking. About food, about playlists, about how June once got fired for painting a too political mural in a startup's wellness corner. By the time they finished, June was full, and maybe a little warm. They walked back toward the subway.
This wasn't a date.
No,
Just to be clear,
painfully.
She looked at him a second longer than she meant to, then went down the stairs. She didn't look back, but she kind of wanted to. Chapter 8, Red Dress, Black Tie, First Kiss. June did not want to go to the Kingsley Gala. She had told Camilla this multiple times, in person, over Slack, via a very dramatic meme in the team group chat. But Camilla, powered by an unholy mix of project pride and sheer chaos energy, had insisted.
It'll be good for you to be seen together. You and Miles are the face of the whole renovation.
June had argued that she didn't want to be the face of anything. Camilla responded by sending her 3 RSVP confirmations and a discount code for Dry Bar. So now, June stood in front of a full-length mirror in a borrowed red dress, eyeliner sharp enough to wound, trying not to hyperventilate. The dress was a mistake. It fit too well. It made her look like she had plans she wasn't admitting to. She looked good, which made her nervous. She arrived early, thinking she'd find a drink in a corner to hide in. Instead, she found Miles. Black suit, no tie, hair slightly mussed, posture relaxed. He looked like every bad idea she'd ever flirted with but never acted on. He saw her, paused, then walked over.
You clean up?
He said.
you show up.
Was that meant to be a compliment?
I haven't decided yet.
They didn't touch, didn't get too close. But the air between them felt charged. Camilla appeared out of nowhere, her clipboard now covered in metallic washi tape.
You two look amazing. Get ready to schmooze. The board members love artistic tension.
And with that, she pushed them into the center of the room and disappeared like the chaos sprite she was. June and Miles endured 20 minutes of rich people talking about immersive storytelling and the future of accessibility. He handled it like a pro. Smiled, nodded, offered jargon when asked. June floated beside him like a haunted painting. At one point, a donor leaned in and said,
You two have a certain spark.
June nearly choked on her champagne. Miles didn't react. Eventually, they retreated to the terrace. City lights spilled over the edge of the rooftop like confetti. June leaned on the railing, trying not to think too hard.
You hate these things?
He asked.
More than white paint on textured brick.
That's serious?
She sighed.
They make everything feel like a performance.
He looked at her.
You're good at pretending.
I've had practice.
A pause. Then,
You looked nervous earlier.
she didn't respond. Then,
You don't have to be perfect all the time.
she turned toward him.
Neither do you.
They stared at each other. And then, like they'd both stopped trying to talk themselves out of it, he kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden wind, no movie swell. Just one long, slow kiss under fairy lights and mutual denial. When it ended, June blinked, then stepped back.
Nope.
Miles raised both hands.
Copy that. This didn't happen.
Of course not.
She turned and walked away. heart pounding, hands shaking. She told herself it didn't mean anything. She didn't believe it. Chapter 9, The Afterglow and the Void. June didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand over her mouth, reliving the kiss in high-definition agony. It hadn't been bad. It had been worse than that. It had been good, which was a problem. Because June didn't do complicated, didn't do feelings with coworkers, didn't do anything that might crack her carefully curated equilibrium. So she decided to ignore it, which would have been easier if Miles hadn't done the exact same thing. No text, no Slack message, no sarcastic emoji. The next day, he didn't show up to the studio. Sam said something about a site visit. Camilla waved it off. But June noticed. She opened their shared file, added a few silent comments, made them neutral. He replied that night. Updated shelving plan. Let me know if it conflicts with color arcs. No mention of lips, or fairy lights, or the fact that she'd walked away mid-swoon. She left the message unread. On day 3, she found a sticky note on her desk. Nice curve placement. His handwriting, blocky, sharp. She stared at it for 10 minutes, then stuck it to the underside of the table. Later, Sam asked if everything was okay between her and Miles. She said, fine, and then ate 2 protein bars in a row because she couldn't remember what real food felt like. That night, she drafted a text. Are we good? No emoji, no punctuation, just anxious detachment. Miles replied 5 hours later, trying not to make it worse. June stared at it, then deleted the thread entirely. She wasn't mad, not really, just disappointed in herself for thinking it would feel different. She went back to work the next morning like nothing happened, but she avoided the terrace and the mirror and anything that might reflect how much she wanted something she wasn't ready to name. Chapter 10, Ghosted, sort of. By day 4, June had fully committed to the bit. The bit being nothing happened. She hadn't kissed Miles. He hadn't kissed her. There was no rooftop, no tension, no wondering if she'd made a huge mistake by walking away. Everything was fine, which is why she hadn't replied to his last message, and definitely why she'd spent 2 full hours color-matching tile samples to avoid the shared Google Doc. She wasn't mad. She just couldn't afford to be hopeful. Hope led to mess, to her working too hard, to over-explaining herself to people who'd already moved on. She'd done it before. She wasn't doing it again. That afternoon, she got a message from Camilla. Need you and Miles to finalize the main wall framing by Friday. Please and thank you. Followed by 3 heart emojis. June sent back a thumbs-up emoji and resisted the urge to follow it with a fire emoji out of spite. She drafted a message to Miles, deleted it, drafted a new one, deleted that too. Finally, she sent, let's just finish the build. No greeting, no punctuation. A message with all the emotional texture of a receipt. He replied 2 hours later. Fine with me. Short, dry. Miles at his most, Miles. She stared at the screen, half hoping for a follow-up. There wasn't one. The next day, they worked in the same room for 4 hours and didn't speak once. It was efficient. It was awful. On her way out, she found another note on her tablet. Good line work today. She stared at it like it might catch fire in her hand, then stuck it in her sketchbook. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, and went home wondering when she'd become the one ghosting someone else. Chapter 11, The Fallout. It happened over a bench, a community seating concept Miles had redesigned, again, without asking. June walked into the studio, looked at the new rendering, and nearly turned around and left.
What is this?
She asked, pointing to the flattened, minimalist bench schematic. Miles looked up from his laptop.
I updated the design.
You deleted the mosaic layers.
They were disrupting the flow.
They were the point.
He leaned back in his chair.
The bench has to function. People actually have to sit on it.
And they will, while also feeling like they're in a space that reflects more than beige Pinterest minimalism.
It's not about beige. It's about usability.
You stripped it of personality.
You overloaded it with noise.
June's pulse kicked.
God, you're such a...
Say it.
He said, calm, dangerous. She closed her eyes.
You know what? Forget it.
Number, you clearly have something to say.
You always do.
She snapped.
With your calm voice and your perfect sketches and your measured restraint. It's exhausting.
His jaw tightened.
At least I don't treat every creative disagreement like a referendum on my worth.
June flinched. They stood there, across from each other, breath sharp, silence jagged. And then, quieter.
Is that what you think?
She asked.
That I'm just dramatic?
I think
He said slowly.
you're scared that if you stop defending yourself for 1 second, no one else will.
That landed too hard, too fast. June turned, grabbing her bag.
I'm not doing this.
June,
No.
She walked out of the building and didn't stop until the wind had wiped the heat off her cheeks. She didn't cry, but she thought about it. Chapter 12, The Croissant Mural. June didn't mean to come back. She told herself she was just stopping by the studio to grab her water bottle. That's what she said when she passed the security guard, what she repeated when she keyed herself into the quiet Kingsley Co-op after hours. But her feet took her past the cubbies, past the break room, straight to the mural wall, the one she'd threatened to leave blank, the one they were supposed to design together. She stood in front of it, fingers twitching. The fight still echoed in her ears. The way he'd said, "You're scared," like he wasn't afraid of anything. She hated that he was right. She hated more that he cared enough to say it. June grabbed a paintbrush and didn't think. She started small, a spiral, then a swirl, then a familiar half-moon shape, flaky edges forming beneath her brush. A croissant. It wasn't subtle, but neither was she. She worked in silence, filling the wall with movement, layers, curls, color. The mural grew. Coffee mugs, mismatched plates, smudges of pastry crumbs. Chaos with intention. She lost track of time. She didn't hear the door open, but she heard his voice.
is that a tribute?
She turned. Miles stood in the doorway holding 2 coffees.
A croissant mural.
She said, as if that explained anything. He walked in slowly and chuckled.
You really committed.
I needed to paint something true.
He looked at her, then at the wall.
It's very you.
I'm sorry, for before.
Miles didn't say anything right away. Then
Me too.
he stepped closer.
I didn't mean to make you feel small.
He said.
And I didn't mean to set everything on fire.
A beat. They stood there, mural between them. Then June handed him a brush.
No beige.
She said. He dipped it into cobalt.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Chapter 13, The Color Wheel and the Dinner Thing. 3 days later, he texted her. There's a Vietnamese place near the studio. Want to overthink noodles with me? June stared at her phone for a full minute before typing back.
Only if we don't call it a date.
Absolutely not. That would make it weird.
Good.
I'm picking you up at 7.
He showed up on time. She wore a black dress that was definitely not casual. He wore a button-down she hadn't seen before. They ate too slowly, laughed too easily, talked about anything but work. June told him about her first mural, painted illegally on a college dorm basement wall. Miles admitted he used to design houses in his notebook as a kid, but was too shy to tell anyone. After dinner, they walked through the city like neither wanted to go home. At a red light, she turned to him.
So this still isn't a date?
He smiled.
Painfully not.
They stopped in front of her building. June hesitated. Then,
Do you want to come up?
he blinked.
For
She smirked.
Color theory, obviously.
thought you'd never ask.
Epilogue. 1 year later, and still arguing. The mural was a Brooklyn landmark now. Okay, not officially, but enough people had taken selfies in front of it that Kingsley finally installed a plaque with a QR code and the caption, "Yes, it's a croissant. No, we're not explaining." June stood in front of it, paint still on her jeans, brush tucked behind one ear. The afternoon light slanted across the space just right. catching on the blues and golds she'd layered last week during a midnight burst of inspiration. Miles walked up beside her, holding 2 iced coffees and a croissant in a brown paper bag.
Morning, Mural Queen.
He said.
Bold of you to assume I've earned that title today.
He handed her the coffee.
You didn't spill anything, critique Camilla's outfit, or threaten to repaint the entrance. You're doing great.
She sipped.
It's still early.
They stood there for a while, just looking. The space was hosting its 1-year celebration tonight. The board was bringing cake. Camilla had commissioned custom tote bags. Sam was DJing under the alias Internalized Bassline.
Can you believe it's been a year?
She asked.
Feels like yesterday I watched you hoard pastries and threaten drywall.
And you mansplained wall anchors.
That's called support.
She rolled her eyes.
You're lucky I find you attractive.
I live in a state of mild awe.
He bumped her shoulder lightly. She leaned into it. They still disagreed on color palettes, layout angles, and the ideal number of communal seating options. But the fights were different now. Easier, funnier, built on something that felt more like trust than tension. June turned to him.
You're still not allowed to change my mural.
And you're still not allowed to rearrange the bench structure.
Deal, they both replied. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But when the lights dimmed that evening and someone toasted the team that had made Kingsley's rebirth possible, he looked at her across the room and mouthed, "We did it." And she smiled like she believed it, because they had. Not perfectly, not easily, but real. And for the first time in a long time, that was more than enough. Thanks for listening to tonight's story. If it brought you comfort, curiosity, or just a little bit of calm, go ahead and give it a like. And if you'd like more tales like this, narrated just for you, don't forget to subscribe. We've always got another story waiting.